it is essential that we understand iatrogenic effect. Iatrogenic effects from a medical perspective has to do with the inadvertent harm that can be caused by the healer, the inadvertent harm that can be caused by the attorney. We are here to help. We're here to move this case along, to give an advantageous outcome to this case. This is true, but in the process, we can re-traumatize inadvertently. In the process, we can be insensitive inadvertently. We can be another system that will fail this individual, this couple, and this family, all the same time that we were intending to help. Okay? What are the ways in which we can do this inadvertent harm? One of the chief ways is to fail to understand this notion. I think about this often as I think about fathers like Ezekiel's father. We all have sympathy and empathy when we see this, right? Especially if I tell you that these children are in homes where they're exposed to domestic violence and they're exposed to substance abuse and they're being physically abused and neglected. We all want to rescue these children. There should be something inside of us that says, how can I get close to this child if that's the case? Or it's horrific what's happening. There's a pang that wakes up inside of us. This is the case. However, these children don't remain this size for very long. These children become these young people. And when they do, our knee-jerk reaction is not to have the same level of empathy or sympathy for them, right? It isn't. If you should run into this young man in an elevator, you might make, hopefully, a reasonable and reasoned decision to say, maybe I'll take the next elevator. And I'm not saying that that's not right and true and just and wise to do, but the case is that we become much more inured to individuals as they age, in large part because we say, well, by this point, they should know better. Whatever the they should know better about is. But when we've just cut them off from their story and their narrative, that's an easy thing to essentially do. But from our perspective, even when we're dealing with clients who are very difficult, right? Clients who are obscuring or concealing all of the law-breaking that they have done, and that you're scratching your head saying, how am I going to make this person sympathetic to the court because I don't even like them? It is helpful to take a step back and say, again, what happened to this person? So the Scottish theologian, I believe his name is McLaren, says, be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a difficult struggle you know nothing about. Right? If you scratch under the surface of everyone, no matter how well put together, there's a story. And that story quite often involves some form of trauma or difficulty that helps to explain why someone is abrasive. Doesn't excuse it away, but it helps to explain and give a context for why someone is so difficult to deal with. Has it happened to you before? You've dealt with somebody very challenging, not necessarily in your legal career, just in your life. You're like, this person is a lot, and I'd rather not. But then you begin to discover something about their past that sort of puts things into context and say, oh, I get it to some extent. Right? So one of the ways in which we can do inadvertent harm to our clients is by failing to understand that what we see today can very much be the effect of causes that are underneath the mass of the iceberg. And it is our job to try to discover what those causes are. Our clients may not be particularly helpful in helping us understand what the mass under the iceberg is, in part because of trauma, in part because of an emotional numbing, in part because of repression, in part because of a lack of insight into their own experience, a lack of psychological mindedness, that they're able to come and express, well, the reason that I'm so obnoxious to you, Mr. Attorney Riley, the reason I'm so obnoxious is because I was routinely beaten by people who kind of look like you, and I don't, right? People don't have necessarily those connections to be able to make. But if we can be patient, then we might not necessarily fall into the trap of doing inadvertent harm.